no one's hungover in this room. Everyone's like...
really well.
Yeah.
Are you hungover?
Am I hungover?
Yeah.
No, man, I just landed. So I was sleeping on the plane. Although I did land in Orlando, literally, I don't even know, 3 hours ago or something. I recognized that I was indeed drooling all over myself. Because I took a hero dose of melatonin, which I don't know what to do. But Nikki and I had so much work we were doing yesterday, and I had all this tea throughout the day, and I got to the airport, and I was like... But note to self, melatonin, which I haven't taken in about 15 years, makes you have the most insane...
Well, speaking of that, actually, I guess it was last fall, maybe it's a little bit further than that, you were part of the National Geographic Channel Years of Living Dangerously. They did that whole thing at... Yeah, it was awesome. Like,
thank you, that was unbelievable, man.
And both you and Nikki did it, were involved with that. Just kind of talk about the experience, and even though you are very socially active, talk about some of the things that you really learned from that and the takeaway of working on that project for Nat Geo.
I don't know, I mean, look, not everybody, I know some people can't definitely wait to get out of bed to watch a National Geographic show about climate change, but Nat Geo is my hero at this point. Fox now owns it, and when we talk to the president of Nat Geo, or you talk to any of the heads of that company, and they say, look, we have a brand that's like 110 years old. It's the most trusted, it's more trusted than like Johnson and, well, it's Johnson, that's a bad example. We just found out that all the shit they've been putting in our stuff since we were babies is toxic. So maybe we should use another example. It's like Ford or something, like you just know that name. And they are producing incredible content. And Nikki and I flew from LA. We ended up in the Bahamas. And we get on this Zodiac, you know, the boats, they're sort of air-filled boats, like a huge engine on the back, and you go, and you go off, and you come out of this cove, and we're in the open ocean, and we're going to this 185-foot research vessel. We get on this boat, and then we sail for days and days, and we end up 40 miles off the coast of Cuba to this giant blue hole in the middle of the ocean, and it was a calcium carbonate cave 23,000 years ago. And because of rainfall, which is acidic, it collapsed these caves in, the roofs, and they just became these giant holes. Now at the time, about 23,000 years ago, and then to about 12,000 years ago, it was ice. And as the ice melted, obviously the water filled in. It was only about 400 feet deep. And it created this like unbelievable catch basin for all this sediment. Now, this sounds so boring, but it's actually like a time capsule, but a real one. And we got to drill these cores of these samples out with these amazing scientists, and then they go back and they look at it. And it literally tells the story of our climate history, or at least of the ocean, for the last few millennia. And going back and looking at all this, what we found, which you guys live in Central Florida, the warmer the water, the bigger the storms. Now I'm from New Orleans. I know all about hurricanes, and they scare the shit out of me. And they're natural, but they're not this type of natural. The warmer we make our water, the bigger and more frequent our storms are going to be. And how do we make our water warmer? By just spewing insane amounts of carbon into the air, senselessly, without regulation. So, I'm not kidding you guys, I gotta stand because this is like, I get all excited about this shit. I looked at this core sample on this table at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Cape Cod, And I saw, in periods where sea temperatures were warmer, storms were bigger and more frequent. And so we now have raised our water temperatures higher than they were when the storms were at their worst. So, unless you're Rick Scott, your governor, who refuses to allow the words climate change to be used in the Capitol, you physically can't use the words. The science tells us that, unfortunately, the storms of the future are going to be much more frequent, and they're going to make Hurricane Katrina and Sandy look like a summer thunderstorm. So, whatever that does for you or to you, I highly recommend checking this out because it'll blow your mind. I thought I was a geek. I am now a geek. You know, being in the research lab with these things, and this guy Ray Dalio, who's this billionaire who built this company called Bridgewater Capital, he's taking the billions of dollars he's made, and instead of just buying like giant private airplanes, 22-year-old buy them in, so that's okay, but what we're doing on screen, everyone went, nah, this is great. And those were great scenes and they were super scary, but I had some, people always ask me, how did you prepare for this? It's like, well, I didn't rape anyone, I didn't kill anyone. This guy, I always hoped Damon would be basically like Cary Grant meets Mick Jagger via like Marlon Brando and The Wild One. This is just sort of timeless, cool, total whack-a-mole dude. And that's what he became in varying degrees of success over time. But again, it's like you gotta fight for that. You gotta fight to make those goofy choices or take that extra second on screen time to find the right feeling or the right, not to sound like an actor who's just working with tics, but like find the right moment in there that has the right smirk based on what's going on in my head to actually make it believable and fun. And I had to fight every single day. One more take, let's just get, because choices, as far as an actor, when you make bold choices, people aren't comfortable with it, because it's not the norm. There was that really cool story with Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean. Disney didn't want him? Like, what are you talking about? He's wearing eye makeup and he's acting like a drunk? This is a children, like, are you crazy? Cut to one of the greatest characters ever. It's now made them, I think, like $12 billion. They didn't want him. They did not want him. So, if you're, and obviously you don't want to fight with with everyone, but as an artist, or whether you're in banking, real estate, medicine, whatever it is, obviously within standard norms, that's legal. You want to think within those confines, but you also want to think out of the box. Where do you think Apple came from? Where do you think Henry Ford dreamed up the car by just wanting to stay in norms? And I think that in this day and age now, where everything has been invented, it seems, in the technology space, we have, there are people that have jobs at Google that didn't exist 10 months ago. With my own company, my wife and our girls, our executives, they're going to kill me if I talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
So, again, like I said, even if our stuff sucks, just watch it anyway. Because we're trying, and not everything's going to be a huge, giant hit. But we're going to try and tell some great stories.
Well, okay, so then how about this? Since we can't say what is going to be on the way, tease us with the stuff that brings you the most joy as far as comedy. Either little Ian, little kid, or now, what's the stuff that you remember watching that made you laugh the most? That if you could channel the spirit of that kind of thing, you're golden.
Oh man. I mean, when I was a kid, the wacky stuff that was on TV was like, when I was a kid, I saw I Love Lucy reruns, and what a talented woman and cast.
Yes, sir.
One thing I definitely want to stay away from, remember, how old are you?
We're the same age.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you ever watch the reruns of The Honeymooners?
Oh, of course, yeah.
What the fuck? I was like, now looking back, my mom and I were talking about this. She goes, yeah, it was a huge, big smash hit of a super abusive husband
Yeah.
who, and like, even though Alice she had it by the cojones, but it was still like, man, this was American society, and this guy's like, I'm gonna knock you to the moon. And you're like, whoa. But I used to sit and laugh my ass off at the stuff like the Lucille Balls of the world, but now the cable funnies are what really get me going. I think now if I could channel, God, I don't know. I'm gonna have to come back to that, because I think about all the stuff that used to make us laugh. Tom and Jerry, super violent. Like all they did was beat the show. Hell yeah, man. Love right back to you, kiddo. You know what? I love the first season. That was just Damon that was the character I thought I would be playing for 6 years or something, but remember?
Yes.
Solid. Remember when Damon was turning Vicky into a vampire, and she's trying to teach her how to eat? She could, I don't remember what the words were, but he was basically saying, like, you can grab them, eat them, and then erase their memories, so you don't have to worry about it.
Snatch, eat, erase.
Snatch, eat, erase. and Stefan is like, Damon, that is so not cool. What are you thinking? This is just so wrong. And I remember I was sitting at his desk, I was reading a paper or something, and I went, all right, Count Deepak. And I walked off. Well, Deepak Chopra has since become a mentor and really an amazing man in my life. But it was just I love those moments.